Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. It's great to have everybody streaming in from across the internet today. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have a great episode on the topic. It's a little bit outside of what you would expect on Political Trade Secrets, but however, it is a timeless wisdom. Beginner's mind when knowing gets in the way of discovery. So we are going to be bringing that to the realm of campaigns and elections and politics. And really this theme that we've talked about throughout our episodes of really empowering citizens to be leaders, to be political leaders, and really empowering those who see possibilities where others may only see constraints. And I'm looking forward to getting the thoughts and ideas and insights of our co-host, Sean Bartley. Sean, how are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Good to be with you. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, we are definitely looking forward to it. And I'm going to have to fix my sound here because I cannot hear you. So
Okay.
1 second here and I will get that. But
Sure.
Give us your thoughts real quick while I make sure I can hear you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today because it really is a great way to look at things newly. And we get opportunities to do that from time to time. But it's it's kind of difficult to get yourself into that mindset often, and so really taking a look at kind of its origins, one, the difference that it can make, some examples, and then also just how you can employ it in politics. I think this will make a big difference for folks out there today. So I'm looking forward to that as part of the conversation that we're going to have here shortly. So, and and while before we jump into that, though, I want to just share with you our sponsors, the people who help make this show possible. Look, are you thinking about running for office or what it takes to be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods? It's olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. It's one of the ways to look at campaigning newly, as we're going to be talking about today, but also just get a perspective that's outside of those that might already be around you. So it's olsonstrategies.com. You can email me, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, and we would love to schedule that conversation with you. We're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? It's all of the one-on-one, human-to-human interactions that a campaign does. Canvassing, petitioning, live calling, and it's www.grassfire.us. You get one shot to make a first impression. Make it count. Make it Grassfire. And then they also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your way to connect with voters or constituents right where they are. Information moves quickly. We know that in doing this show. Things can change. Things change while we're on the air. But being able to connect with your voters and be able to get them real-time information about what might be going on at the State House or what might be going on in your city. It's 10centtexting.com. Connect with your voters, your constituents today. Dustin?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I assume you can hear me just perfectly at this point. So, thank you for that. I wanted to give people an update. So we are going to be sending out an email here shortly to everybody who signed up to be a political trade secrets insider. Thank you for doing so. And we are going to be also adding to your ability to join the Political Trade Secrets Insider. So, go to politicaltradesecrets.com to sign up, get exclusive stuff, make sure that we can be in communication. And one of the ways that we're going to make sure that we can be in communication is that we are going to be providing you with a way to text us to join our texting community. So this is part of the Political Trade Secrets community. You can text this phone number. You can do it right now, actually, and you can join us on our texting platform. So this is my personal number. I will get your text, and then I will be able to send you updates every single day as we go live. You'll be able to get it directly to your text, and it's just going to be a great way for us to all be in communication. So with that, I'm going to give you the phone number. It's 202-918-3345. You can go ahead and text that. Text whatever you want. Hey, how you doing? Whatever you want to say, and you will be part of our texting community. So please do that now and ensure that we can always be in communication. Even if we got shut down by the big tech overlords and they wouldn't let us do anything, we can have a conversation over text this way, and we can make sure that we can all empower every conservative out there to be the most effective citizen possible, as well as empower them to be political leaders for their communities, for their state, and for our country. Together, we have the ability to show up, step up, and speak up and make a difference for our country. So with that, go to politicaltradesecrets.com or text me at 202-918-3345, and we look forward to having you be part of our community. Sean, I am really excited about this topic today. It's going to be a little bit different than it's not going to be a little bit different. One of the things I think is unique about us is we bring in lots of different perspectives to our topics. And it comes from this idea, we might do an episode about this at some point. When I first became a political operative and seeking to be a political strategist, I found out that there really wasn't any great education out there that you could find to learn how to be a political strategist. You really could go learn strategy from other walks of life, from business, from military, from history, from people who are successful leaders throughout history. And what happened is that I started developing this idea of comparative strategy and fusion strategy. And the idea was that you would go and you'd learn from a completely different discipline how they solved problems, how they achieved their objectives. And you could take those strategies, and by being an outsider looking in, having beginner's mind, you were able to see what worked and what didn't work. And then you could apply that to politics, and it gave you this ability to have kind of inspiration and innovation and ability to have this beginner's mind, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So that's why I'm so excited about this. We bring in all these ideas that are not necessarily what you typically expect from political consulting or political strategy, but can really, they're timeless and they can really make a difference. So let's go into it with political trade secrets in the beginner's mind world.
Yeah,
So if you want to give a couple of definitions of what beginner's mind is to kind of set us off.
absolutely. So, just a few ways to look at this. Dropping our expectations and preconceived ideas about something and seeing things with an open mind, fresh eyes, just like a beginner. So if you've ever learned something new, you can remember that what that's like. You may be confused because you don't know how or what you're doing or learning, but you're also looking at everything as if it's brand new, perhaps with curiosity and wonder.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one way to look at it there. Another way
On that, well, I think the next one you're going to have is excellent. It is so when I first became aware of this, I was looking at the martial arts in particular. And of course, Zen has a big impact on the martial arts. And the idea was that after you work through the belt system, let's say you're in karate or some other discipline within the martial arts, that once you get to a black belt, when you become the absolute expert in your martial art, the next day you begin as though you've never done that martial art before, and you bring that beginner's mind. So that is a good setup for the next quote.
Absolutely. And the one way to think about this is in beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but the experts, but in the experts, there are few. And that was actually from the book Zen Mind Beginner's Mind. We'll get into a little
Which
more.
is Shunryu Suzuki.
Yes.
Which is, the first name is tough for.
Yes, and he was really considered the American Zen master,
Mhm.
and he really brought some of these principles over here and really shone some light on. One of the ways was with this book. So we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. And then one other way to look at this is when you are a true beginner, your mind is empty and open. And you're willing to learn and consider all pieces of information, like a child discovering something for the first time. As you develop knowledge and expertise, however, your mind naturally becomes more closed. You tend to think, oh, I already know this, and become less open to new information. And I think we've all seen that before. In others, of course,
Of course. We never see it in ourselves. That's not true. We'd sometimes see it in ourselves, but you first have to have this idea, this what we would call a strategic distinction of beginner's mind, in order to have a filter that you can apply to yourself and say, where is it that my knowing, and that's the key here, is that knowing oftentimes gets in the way of discovery. Knowing gets in the way of learning something new. When you believe that you know everything there is to know about everything, then there's nothing more to learn. And that's a dangerous place to be, because that's where a disruptor can come in and completely change everything. Think of Uber taking on the entire taxi market. There's so many disruptors. Donald J. Trump came in and completely disrupted politics in a good way. This is what happens, is that when somebody, and this is ultimately what we say, is that the leaders who can do this, they see possibilities where other people only see constraints, because they can't see anything, because they think they know how it all works. They can't see any new options.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so being able to see that, and that's really where coming at this in a way that you're open to discovering new things, and that's where, in particular, knowing gets in the way. And so, really being able to tackle that is something. And so, when we think about this, first you want to kind of talk about where did beginner's mind actually come from, this
Mhm.
concept. And it's also known by a couple of other things: Zen mind, or Shoshin from Zen Buddhism. And so its origins does come from Zen Buddhism, and this notion of Shoshin in particular is known as a concept used to let go of old assumptions. And that's something that doesn't necessarily happen too often in politics, Dustin. I
Yeah.
don't know if you know that.
I'm guessing you have had this experience before. Every political consultant I know has had this experience before. When you show up, and we've worked in so many different places across the country. We've lived in more places across the country than most people have even traveled to, in many cases. And you show up and they say, well, that's just not how we do it around here. Or you don't know, it's different around here. That's what people say. And you get this sense that there's the old guy who's been around for a while, and they go, whoever's running for office goes and talks to the old guy, which we're the old guys in these days. But they go and they talk to the guy who's been around for a while. And he's like, this is what you have to do if you want to get elected. You have to do these things. And there's no questioning of these old assumptions. Now, many of those things might be exactly what you need to do, but there's no looking at it with fresh eyes. It's just assumed that this is what happens.
Well, and just looking back on my past and doing that, first is we're different.
Mhm.
Basically it's some flavor of you just don't get it. We're different here. Things happen differently here. And but I also think back to, hey, you hired me to do this, and I know. And so it was
Mhm.
really a clash of what we already knew.
Yeah, it's a
And
clash of knowing.
yeah, and which could make for some unpleasantness, I think is the official term
Mhm.
for it. And so when you're in that situation, and you'll see it, and it's certainly something that I can get caught up in even now, and just say, yeah, well, I've done this everywhere, and this is how it works. And being able to say that. So one of the things that we really try to do early on is take on this idea of beginner's mind and say, okay, well, what might be true about this being different? What might be true about this being the same as what we've done
Mhm.
before? And what is the landscape here? And and it's where we go into some of the things that we've even talked about this week. It's only Tuesday, and we've been talking about some of these things. This is where you go into the strengths and weaknesses, and you really get that down and think about, like, okay, well, we're going to get this all down. We're not going to have an idea here. And sometimes, and maybe you've got things that are both strengths and weaknesses, and thinking about it like that, where in the past you might have said, wait, a strength is a strength and a weakness is a weakness, period. Um, but really being able to look at it from the way somebody else would talk about it, and putting yourself, you know, I said, just having this conversation yesterday where, one thing that helps is putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah.
Well, that's all fine and good, except what you're really doing is putting yourself in the shoes that you think they're wearing.
Yeah.
So, so even in that situation, bringing beginner's mind to even how you're looking at things can make a huge difference. And for those that are out there, this is a pretty uncommon practice in politics.
Yeah.
So you are going to be
It's why in many ways we don't have policy solutions to a lot of long-standing problems. Often this is part of what's at play. If there's something that just never gets fixed, there might be incentives that are in place. There's disincentives that are in place, but ultimately there's not fresh eyes. There's not a new look. There's not a beginner's mind being brought to it.
Yeah. Oh, exactly right. Exactly right. And so, Dustin, you might have something to share there, or am I?
Yeah. So I'm going to let you tell people, what does this represent?
Yeah. So this represents everything that you could know. This is everything you could know in the world,
Like all of the universe and everywhere else.
Yep. And it's all things. It's all that could be known. And so, this dot represents what you actually know in the world. Now, of course, my sliver is much, much bigger. But
yes. Well, let's be generous and let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's just do that. So imagine this is. Did I do that right?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
So imagine that dot. Now it's become a sliver of the pie here, okay? And that is what you know.
Yeah.
And so just giving some examples. Like, I know English. I know, how to drive a car, those types of things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Those are things I know. And then I know them.
Yep.
I know my name, for example. And then this sliver is what you don't know. And so, today it could be you don't know Mandarin Chinese, or you don't know how to rebuild a carburetor. And you can take things that you don't know, and if you want to know them, you can learn how to do them.
Yeah, and ultimately they're both a function of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what you know, and you know what you don't know.
Correct.
In this scenario. The things that you don't know, that you don't know that.
Yeah.
So, and then, but we have all this other stuff.
And that just leaves the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And all else that could be known. And you just don't have any access to it.
Yep.
And so it's what, you would call that what you don't know, you don't know. And this is one of the ways that bringing beginner's mind can give you access to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think about
ultimately it's the realm of discovery. It's where every single innovation, every single paradigm shift in history has happened, is in this big, wide open space of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's also a space of blind spots. So I would say that it's a space of blind spots and discovery. What you don't know, you don't know. And here's the thing, that when you become an expert, and so we have to guard ourselves on this, that we've become experts, top experts in the field of campaigns and elections and politics. And we have to guard against the fact that our knowing, like getting caught up in all of this, that it can break us off from the rest of this, the realm of discovery, and and also make us blind to the blind spots. We're just unaware that they're there. It's like the fish in the water that's not aware that it's in water. We're at that point, we just have no idea what it is. And by the way, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the show. Wherever you are on the internet, we have 12 different places that we are live streaming to. It looks like everything's going really well as far as that goes today, because we're not talking too much about conservatism and politics, so we're not getting thwarted. But if you're anywhere you're at, you can post a comment or a question, and we will include that into the show. So with that, I'm going to pause for a second. Or actually, Sean, if you have anything else you want to say about blind spots and discovery, and then I'm going to go to a couple of the comments.
No, go ahead and go to the comments. I think what you shared there was great, and is a good place, a good jumping off point after the comments.
Yeah. So Alexandria says it's going to be awesome. This is especially important for those of us that have run before and are planning to run again. We should think of each campaign as if it is the first time we have run for office. That is an excellent point. Thank you for making it. This actually, so if you think about military strategy, so this does, Zen in the martial arts. D.T. Suzuki wrote a book about that, as well as Shunryu Suzuki, different fellows, but this has been a big part of the martial arts, which is part of military strategy. And you think about this idea that is in the military of fighting the last war. This is oftentimes what happens is people go through one battle, one war, and then they take all of the old assumptions from that war, or they're trying to fix the old war. And in the new war, they're really just trying to fix that old war, as opposed to looking at it with fresh eyes and coming to it with beginner's mind and realizing this is another, old wisdom from Greek philosophy, is the idea that you can't step into the same stream twice, that history does not actually repeat. It may feel like it does, but there's never all the same aspects, circumstances. None of it is going to be exactly the same. So you're going to have to come to it with beginner's mind, because you've never been in this situation ever before.
One thing I'll say to that is also the idea of not fighting the last war, not fighting. We talk about that, and you'll hear consultants or other people say we can't fight the last war. And then they don't tell you how not to fight the last war.
we all of us proceed to fight the last war.
Yes. So it's a great thing to say. It's actually true. You don't want to fight the last war. And then there's really no guidance or anything that's suggested to open yourself up to not fighting the last war.
Mm-hmm. But by the way, acknowledging and getting that people fall into the trap of fighting the last war does start to open up access into that realm of discovery, because you get that there's something that you maybe don't know. The problem is, if you try to go fix it, if you only deal with the realm of what you know, then you probably will end up back in the trap of repeating the last war. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. I think about 2012 and Orca, for everybody that's out there. So
it's a famous failure in campaign history.
But the notion was, okay, well, you got to fix what happened with Orca. Well, true, but that isn't what prevented victory. So you want to do a review of what happened in the past. You want to get okay, what did you miss? And okay, how do you fight on completely new terrain? And that is truly think about what happened from 2012 to 2016. President Trump comes along and says, yeah, we're not fighting that war.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the terrain. I don't know that I could actually tell you what the terrain of the 2012 election was, thinking back on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't anything definable about it. And so that is why when a technical failure comes through, it is the thing you remember.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I was about to say that it was basically an example. The race was, the way I define that race is an almost transformational leader versus a technocrat. That's really what the thing was. And then the technocrat wanted to have all this technical wizardry to be the thing that brought him across the finish line, and then had a fabulous failure when it came to the technical side. This is Mitt Romney. And did it make the difference in the race? It made a difference in some places, I think. I don't think it made a difference in the overall race, but I think it totally shot us in the foot. On election day, so many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of volunteers were less effective because of that colossal failure. And what it was, if people don't remember, basically they created a get out the vote app to be able to check people off at the polls as they vote. And that was going to feed into all the canvassing and all of the phone calling and take people off the list as they did that. So we had all these people in the precincts with this app. The app collapsed, completely failed, and then we ended up with no information. But we had all these volunteers out in precincts basically not doing anything. And that's what happened.
Yeah, basically reporting with paperweights, but because it really did no good. And just think about that. There was no like, hey, we're going to win this thing with technology in 2016. In fact, if you'll remember, who was going to win it in 2016 with technology was Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Who was going to do it with, even as they said it, they said, well, yeah, we have less enthusiasm, but we're just better organized. So we've taken it, and you've talked about your experience being near an organization.
So our Denver office was by the Denver City Park, and that's a fairly liberal part of Denver. The folks who ran our building, the office building where we had our office in Denver, great people. Lovely people, supported our politics. However, Hillary Clinton's campaign reached out and wanted to have an office in the same building. And, being good capitalists are the building managers, they brought them in. But they also weren't too politically savvy, and they thought it would make sense to put the Democrat presidential campaign next to the Republican political consulting firm. And they're both in politics. Why wouldn't you put them next to each other? And I had folks from the Democrat campaign office. They would eavesdrop on my door, and one time I could tell that someone was leaning into my door, and I went and opened up the mailbox, and I could see them out there, and they ran away. It was kind of absurd. It wasn't like they were going to find any state secrets listening into our office, but it was funny. But we watched the Hillary Clinton campaign. It was completely dead. There was no life to it, but it was a very well orchestrated death. And it was just, there's nothing to it, but they were very well organized about it. And it was quiet as a church as you went by. And they always had, a few people going door to door, and they'd organize from there. And it was just very well organized. However, there was no inspiration whatsoever, no life in that campaign.
Yeah. So you're going to see that, and getting the what's missing, the way you're going to find it is through this idea of beginner's mind.
Yep.
And so I think I think we can take a look at some examples.
Yeah. Let's. What's your favorite? Favorite film?
Yeah. Well, So as we said in the description today, wax on and wax off with us. So The Karate Kid, as you'll remember in the movie, he's painting the fence, he's washing the car, and Daniel is none too happy about it by the end of the day of day labor out there. Mm-hmm. He says, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be learning karate. And then he discovers that he did learn karate all along. Mm-hmm. And it really gets to, there's a completely different way of doing this. And that Daniel wouldn't have gotten any other way.
Yeah. It was to question his assumptions as to what it was he was actually doing. It's interesting. One of the comments we had here is scientists know that very little is known. And I think that is, that's true. It's the idea that we would know everything is pretty arrogant on our part. What else from Karate Kid?
Well, really looking at, it really goes to the broader idea in martial arts, though, and you were talking about it earlier, is that you need to be looking at this really from all aspects. And so being able to be prepared for what your opponent's going to do, and really being agile, and those things that come along with discovery. Mm-hmm. And, I just think about that movie in particular, and all that Daniel discovered throughout the whole thing, that he was not going to get just being at the dojo.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Mr. Miyagi really got that, and there was some wisdom in that. And I also think about the fact that the typical thing to do would have been the way it's always done.
Yeah.
And so it really took Mr. Miyagi having a completely different mindset.
Or the ability to adapt to the
Yeah.
student ultimately.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we get from our work is that it's actually one of the coolest things that we get to do. We get to really learn about an individual, learn about their life experiences. And every single time we work with somebody and we come away from that with new stories, new experiences that they've given us. And if we were to come into it, and I would say probably earlier in my career, I came into it that I knew everything and this is exactly what they need to be doing. But coming into it with the ability to discover what's there that maybe hasn't been in politics before, that they could provide something totally new, that gives you the opportunity to have a message potentially that's going to cut through because it's something totally different than what people have been saying. So what is it that they can bring different? So for me, when I bring Beginner's Mind to every single campaign, I'm able to look for what might be new, what might be different, what might cut through, what might be a new way to talk about an issue as old as taxes, for instance, and have some freshness to it and have it be something new to the conversation because that new thing that might have the ability to transform the conversation, whatever it is. And that's what we're looking for. So that's something that's been very helpful to me in bringing Beginner's Mind. It's also been helpful to me to be able to bring in other disciplines, as I talked about before, being able to bring in stuff that people might do in the business world into our campaigns. One of the things that we've done in the last few years is we created the campaign performance system. And so taking in the idea of systems versus goals, or taking in systems, kind of an engineering perspective on how things could be done, we've brought in something totally different, and it's elevated the performance of our campaigns. So this is the ability to get that maybe you don't have all the answers, and there's an opportunity to do something differently. Also, when we talk about blind spots, oftentimes it's a blind spot for a reason. You don't see it. So I'll bring this back up so people can look at that.
Yeah.
It's a blind spot for a reason. You don't know it's there, and you're going to have to look at things from different perspectives to be able to get different access to it. So, taking a look at it from different perspectives, you might be able to get another angle on it. And you may not be able to discover everything. Clearly, you're not going to get to know everything that's in the universe. However, being able to get access to something a little bit different than what you saw before is going to give you something that may shift your whole perspective, and it fits with a lot of the stuff you had mentioned before in show prep about the 4-minute mile. If you'd like to give that example.
Well, think about this. Prior to the 4-minute mile being run, it was said that's impossible, and we've talked about other things that were, quote, impossible, like Operation Warp Speed, putting a man on the moon. Just go back in time. These things that were considered to be impossible. The 4-minute mile was something not just considered impossible. It was thought that even to really attempt it, people were going to die. It was, it was just biologically impossible to have it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it happens. And now it's a thing that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing. Once you discover something and it is like discovered for people out there, they go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And
this is why discovery is so powerful, and knowing doesn't really make the difference. Discovery is so powerful because once you discover something, you can't undiscover it.
Mm-hmm.
It really does transform your understanding. It's why this is so powerful, to be able to be open to discovery. Keep going with that thought.
Yeah. So once something's discovered, as you were just saying, it then becomes known by everybody. So that's the other thing. It's like Yeah, of course you can run a 4-minute mile if you train and you do it, and like it's crazy talk. Think
Hmm.
about the world. I think we all know, right? The world's flat, right?
Exactly.
And it was just known until Christopher Columbus failed to go over the side
Hmm.
and and actually found the new world. And then it was like, well, of course the world's round,
Yeah.
and here's the globe to prove it.
And to give the to take this analogy and make it a little bit more clear. Now, it's possible, we hear about the Vikings discovered the new world before that, and you think, well, society forgot that the new world existed. Well, we're not talking about society exactly. I mean, society, this it's going to have an effect on society, but for those individuals who discovered it for themselves, they can never undiscover it. They will, as long as they're conscious, they will not be able to undiscover that discovery. And most likely, in most cases, when something's discovered at that level, it's going to have a societal impact, as you're telling
Yeah.
as well.
Well,
And
and
Thomas Kuhn talks about this in the structure of scientific revolutions, and he's the one who coined the idea of paradigm shifts. That once you add this new perspective, it becomes such a dominant filter that it does have a societal impact, and you can't really see the old paradigm. It's like just thinking about. I was actually telling you a story this morning about an experience from when I was working on the Bush campaign, and how and I had misremembered it. I remembered it as everybody was texting each other about something that had happened. And I thought about it. I'm like, I don't think that's how it happened. I think people emailed each other because people weren't really texting at the level that they do now because we didn't have quite the smartphones that made it easy. You had to like hit the key every, 3 times to get to some letters. So I misremembered it because it just the paradigm shift has become so complete with the smartphone. I just remembered it as being texting, but I don't think that was the case. It's
no,
been so long ago.
yeah, and that's a great example. And so you're going to see examples like these when you really go back and look throughout your life. And so
Mhm.
really take a look at that. And so let's just talk a little bit about, and we talked about it some, but really just putting a little finer point on some of these things. Knowing is the enemy of discovery. Um, Besides being a statement that we believe is fact,
Mhm.
it's also a great way to look at this. Like when you see that, yeah, I know. Whenever you see yourself answering that way or thinking that way, but not answering that way.
Yeah, my biggest pet peeves is when someone says, I know," and they haven't even heard you finish the statement. They just assume they know what you are going to say,
Mhm.
and you all have had that experience too. It is annoying because you know that they don't know what you're going to say. Sometimes you don't even know what you're going to say, but it's the knowing you can tell is just a complete block to communication in that case, or a complete block to um, getting a solution to a situation.
Yeah. So when you see that popping up, you really want to be looking and at how you're being
Hmm.
in that moment. And we talk about that a lot here. And so, what are some other ways of being that could have you can shift that for you?
Hmm.
And so, here are some to try on out there: being curious, being open,
Yep.
being creative, are a few that we talked about prior to the show. And I would also say being patient. Sometimes the I know is like, I got to get on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, and I'm talking to
You could.
myself here. I don't know.
Yeah. You could.
I'm
You
really
could. You could
talking to
bring
the audience.
beginner's mind to even the ways of being. There's infinite ways of being
Mhm.
about any situation, and it could be that's really excellent. Being patient is definitely one. Being a leader in general, being a leader is going to be somebody who's going to be listening. Being a listener, it could be all sorts of different ways of being. Um, being irreverent could be one in some cases, or being a disruptor could be another one. But there are so many different ways of being, but you can bring a different. And when we say way of being, it's kind of a filter for yourself and your actions and what you're going to say. It's where you're standing as, okay, if I'm being curious, what would I do? What would I say? You don't even have to think about it because it just becomes obvious. And we say context is decisive. This is what we're talking about. The context of who you're being in the moment is going to give you your actions. I want to bring up a quote or a quote, actually a comment from the audience. By the way, thank you for the sharing. And I see that a few people have shared. Thank you for doing that. And for texting to join the text community. The people who thought the world was flat were only exposed to Euclidean geometry and not exposed to non-Euclidean geometry, which is amazing given Euclid's 13 Elements was written centuries before Columbus. Well, they did call it the Dark Ages for a reason. That is so. Thank you for the comment there. This is sometimes discoveries do fall into the background and people don't use them, but for Euclid and for the mathematicians after that, every single time they discovered something new or they came up with something new, they added something to the whole process. I want to go. Go ahead.
Just one thing.
Mhm.
Just thinking about, we call it the Dark Ages now, and then I'm going to guess they didn't think, hey, you know what? We're living in the Dark Ages.
No, they hadn't. They probably at that point they totally were in a blind spot. They had, in many cases, this is why it was the Dark Ages. They didn't even remember the Greeks and many of the great texts. So I want to bring beginner's mind to beginner's mind.
Okay.
So what we've talked about, knowing is the enemy of discovery, and being an expert can stop discovery and growth. It also is possible that once you have become an expert and you have learned a lot, you know a lot, you can also become a jazz musician. You can become the person who can actually riff off of what you know. You can actually get out of the pitfalls and everything else. So the reason I say this is that it's also common when you're actually truly a neophyte and you've never done something before that you end up doing exactly what everybody does. And you take the received wisdom from the old hand from campaigns and what they tell you to do, and you end up doing the exact same thing that everybody does because they end up under the gun and they keep doing the same thing. So this is why we talk about it in the realm of martial arts. You become a black belt, so you learn everything you can. So we're not anti-knowing, not anti-learning stuff, not anti-knowledge. This is learn everything you can and then be able to set it aside and look at the world with fresh eyes as though you've never learned anything. Yeah. And that in that case, you can become the jazz musician who is able to riff off of the music and be able to come up with something completely new at that point.
Yeah, that is such a great point. And if you feel yourself falling back on what you know, or, hey, I'm the expert here, when you feel yourself falling back on those things, that's like red alert time.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're not really opening yourself up. And what we say is beginner's mind is really the opening to opportunity or to possibility and opportunity. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at this, you just want to make sure that you're not being walled off from something that's possible there. So
you're not caught up in your blind spots, that you aren't missing those opportunities, that you're able to see possibilities where other people may see constraints. The last thing I want to go to on this is, who are some of the political leaders that you see that they may not have called it beginner's mind, but they use this idea, this distinction?
Yeah, well, that's a great question.
Well, I'll go first if you want to think about it.
Yeah.
The number one person, and this isn't going to shock people, is that because this is one of the reasons why I became a big supporter, is I actually see that Donald Trump is one of those people who I think he actually knows what beginner's mind is, and he actually talks a lot about it in his books, and he talks not specifically beginner's mind, but he talks about seeing possibilities And he talks, there's a couple of speeches that he gave before he was a candidate where he talked about the ability to see possibilities and to not get caught up in your preconceived ideas about things, and to do that. So that's one of the things that he brought to politics. And it's why you saw so many different ways that he was able to solve problems, was able to get more done, because he wasn't willing to just get caught up with doing it the same old way that it's always been done in Washington, D.C. So he's one example.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan, I think,
Mm-hmm.
really looking particularly at the Cold War.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're not.
He didn't assume that détente was the only way to deal with it.
Exactly. And, it wasn't going to be détente and shuttle diplomacy till the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there had to be another way. And he really came about it through the filter of freedom is the clarion call for humankind.
Yeah.
And so that was a belief he had. And so kind of looking at things through that filter, it was like, wait a minute. If you truly believe that people can be called and that can inspire people wherever they are in the world, well, then shutting off half the world to it doesn't make any sense at all. And just being like, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as this hemisphere is good, then so be it. So I think Ronald Reagan was really a great example of that. And in that particular context, when you kind of look at politics in particular,
I'd go back to Abraham Lincoln as the next one. He, I mean, when the real telltale sign is that someone does something that's extraordinary that you weren't expecting in order to meet an objective. And I would say with Lincoln, with Reagan, with Trump, that was obvious. I don't know if I can think of any other presidents. Maybe Jackson. I don't know. It's really hard to think of other people who were so outside of the box. I think about any of the founding fathers. Clearly, they were all folks who were bringing this idea that we could do things differently than we've done before, than we've ever done before. Every single one of them, this is very much present.
Yeah, I was going to mention two of them in particular, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at what they did, now they were rivals. I mean, hard to, but they became great friends. And I think one of it was that they both were setting out to really make this American experiment work.
Yeah.
And so now they had different ideas about how to do it, but they came together on the drafting of a declaration and stuff like that to begin with. They were rivals through most of their political career, and then became great friends after their time in office. So I think they really gave an opportunity to give each other a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that was really critical in that time, and kind of the back and forth that happened there. So
I think of Ben Franklin as another of the founding fathers who not only did he bring this to government and politics, he brought it to inventions, to science, to commerce, to fire departments, libraries, the postal system. This is so many ways that he just brought in new ideas, and they were all voracious learners. They learned so much. They learned so much about Greek and Roman history, and they were part of the Enlightenment. They learned so much, and then they were able to play that jazz. And we have a quote or a comment from one of our viewers. Painters have that experience, the jazz. After artists paint their first painting, their perspective on the world changes forever. Even if you are not good, it is a great exercise. Well, in this case, I guess we could also add George W. Bush. He's a painter. I've seen a number of his paintings. I've been involved with the library. The most famous one, of course, is him painting the self-portrait of him in the bathtub, which Bill Clinton gave him a hard time about at the library opening, and for good reason. Then there's another comment: Rutherford B. Hayes, who united the country after the Civil War; Theodore Roosevelt, who believed you could be a Republican and a progressive. So these are all great examples and worth looking into. One thing that's going to be a telltale sign for somebody who has this ability to bring beginner's mind, and you're going to see this in a number of the people that we just talked about. They have this ability to go from one discipline to another and to excel in many of them. And they're going to have done lots of different things. You think about Donald Trump, reality TV star, a business mogul. He's an author. He has been, a builder, all the different things that he has done. You think about a Reagan. Reagan was an actor. He was in Hollywood. He became the pitch man for General Electric, and he did a lot of different things, and he honed his ideas over time. And so he had all those different experiences, and plus being governor. You think about Abraham Lincoln. He was a rail splitter at one point.
Yeah.
He grew up in the wilderness of the country, and then became a lawyer and various different things. He brought a completely different perspective than a lot of people would have. And at that point, he was from a party that was not an established party.
Yeah.
And then the founding fathers, most of them, Ben Franklin's the best example of somebody who was in lots of different disciplines. And every single time you take on, every discipline has its way of looking at things. When you take on different disciplines and you look at it from different perspectives, you start to have access into that greater knowledge of the world, and you can tap into it. That's at least my assumption in this. So it's worth questioning, but I do think that that's how you end up with a different view of the world, is by taking on those filters, those perspectives of lots of different disciplines can give you access to the blind spots and give you access to discovery, and bringing kind of like a Renaissance perspective of being able to look at things from many different perspectives and take what you learn in one area and bring it to another.
Yeah. Well, those are great examples. And so I encourage people to kind of take a look at them, take a look at this, look at Shoshin and this idea of Zen mind or beginner's mind, and really dig into it and see what it brings about for you.
Well, this episode could be for anybody in any walk of life. It doesn't have to be political strategy, but we desperately need this in politics, because doing things the exact same way over and over again is just not going to get us much in the way of new results.
Yep. Exactly. What's the saying? You do what you've done, you get what you got. So.
Exactly. That's great. Well, do you have any final thoughts on this topic? Otherwise, I'd like to tell people how they can be engaged.
I think you really got where I'm at on this, and I really just enjoyed the conversation, the great comments, and what you had to share as well. So yeah, tell people how they can get involved.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everybody for your comments today, and for your engagement, and for really bringing this to whatever it is that you're up to in life. We are here to empower conservatives to be the most effective citizens possible for our country, but also to be the powerful political leaders that your community, your state, and our country needs. And we are here to empower you in that. So go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider, get exclusive stuff, as well as you can now text us to join our community. And you can just go to 202, text me at 202-918-3345, and you will get a text directly from me. I might hand my phone over to Sean sometimes for him to text out to the group as well, but that will actually directly get in touch with us, and a way for us to simplify and streamline communication in order to be able to ensure that we always can use our First Amendment right to free speech and assembly and freedom of thought to make a difference for this country.
Absolutely. So, hey, are you looking at how you can maximize your First Amendment rights, your right to pursue political office, or to be the most powerful political leader you can be? It's olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You can email me, Sean, SEAN at olsonstrategies.com or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. In addition to considering to run for office, we're also looking for interns and fellows, so you can email us for that as well. We'd love to have a conversation with you about that. We're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. This is petitioning, canvassing, live calling, your way to have one-on-one communication with the voters. You get one shot at a first impression. Make it count. Grassfire is better than anybody in the business of this. www.grassfire.us. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your way to communicate with people right where they are on their mobile device. Put an image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message. It's truly quite amazing. So go to 10centtexting.com and learn more about how you can communicate with your constituents and your voters right there on their mobile device. Dustin.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. And all right. If you'd like to join Share Force, make a difference, reignite American patriotism, you can go to the website, sign up, and that way we can include you in the Share Force. Share every episode. It really does help us get the episodes where we get into more of the issues, and we have a conservative philosophy that we present. Those typically don't get as much traction with Facebook, Twitter, and the like. So if you can share those, it helps us get to more people who are really seeking. We got this from our Rush Limbaugh episode, the tribute to Rush Limbaugh, that what he provided to people was the sense that they're not alone. A lot of people had these thoughts, they had these ideas, they really loved our country, and they wanted people who would actually highlight our country and how great it is. And they didn't get that from the typical media. And so there are people out there that want to know that there are folks who are willing to support them in their service in their community, and we would like to be that for them. So please do share it. That's how you can make a difference for the country and for your community as well. You don't have to run for office. This is a way that you can do that. So please do share our episodes. With that, Sean, thank you very much for an excellent episode and for all that you brought to it and all of your insights. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all the comments from all the wonderful folks who are active participants in this program. This is a program that is it's about you, and you bring a lot to it. So thank you very much for doing that. We do appreciate it. And with that, we will be back tomorrow with another round of great political trade secrets. I mean, we're giving everything away. It's all the best stuff. And really, we do appreciate you. Please do text us at the number so that you can join the texting community. And with that, this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.